So it's no big surprise that people are pretty lazy today and don't want to work. You know, we have so many things happening right now where people just kind of have given up. You know, nobody wants to get the job done properly anymore. And I decided to bring on my best friend, Dan. He's basically a brother to me. And some of you have heard about him before on the channel. I've mentioned him before, but you never met him before. So here he is. What's up, man?
How's it going?
Good, good. So I appreciate you coming on. I wanted to bring you on today because you experience this a lot within your day-to-day routine and the job that you do. And I don't know how many times you've told me about how many people are just like super lazy. They don't want to get their job done and kind of expect you to do things that you're not supposed to do. So
yeah,
tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you know, it's just seems everybody's just looking for somebody else to pick up the weight. You know, I've always kind of had this issue where I just can't be lazy. I have to do 100% the best that I can do, and just unfortunate that there's so many lazy people out there that kind of take advantage of people like us who are go-getters and take pride in what we do no matter what it is.
So like, what's a specific example of something that's happened recently? I think you were telling me that, you know, you had people that didn't want to even get out of their truck or didn't want to use the forklift or something in order to put a load on your truck. I forgot what you said it was, but
it gets so bad to the point where, so I drive a steel truck, and it's just, I don't know what the deal is, but it's like people complain about moving a pen to sign a piece of paper or even hopping on a forklift. I mean, I get that sometimes, you know, you're on break, fine, but you know, like for me, that's really a pain because then I just have to sit and wait. You know, I could rush all day and make good time and then get caught up because some lazy person just has to waddle over, go find a forklift, and you know, oh, I gotta go find the keys from my supervisor. Well, he's busy with something else, and just, it's like there's 20 people around here. You're the only person. I just don't get it. So it's just, for me, it's like a trickle down effect. You know, I could be busting my butt all day to make good time and then get hung up, and then it's just every branch on the way down after that. I get caught up here, then I get caught in another person's break. Maybe I might hit some trains, and one 5-minute delay could cause 2 hours of my time. And for me, that's just not okay. You know, I value my time more than anything, especially now that I have a kid. And bottom line, like, I'm not trying to do overtime. Don't want to. You know, you lose most of it out of taxes, and it's just not worth it to me. So, you know, it really is upsetting when, like I said, sometimes I literally will just carry the entire skid in by hand. And here you go. Have a good day.
Because nobody else will do it.
No,
right? You're not even supposed to do that either, right?
No.
That's not your job. Your job is just to drive the truck.
Exactly. I'm just supposed to drive. I'm not supposed to touch anything. Well, I shouldn't say not touch anything, but I do have a weight restriction. I'm not going to say what that is. Just a little bit of background. You know, we've always lifted. We like to stay in shape. For 10 years, I moved furniture. I don't have a problem lifting the weight. To me, I'd rather lift it and get it off my truck and keep on moving. But that's just, I also don't want to be a lazy trucker, you know, I mean. And
probably the rest of the guys you work with wouldn't do that either. They would just sit in the truck and wait. They're just like, well, whatever, I'm just going to wait until somebody else does it, right? There's
only one other guy who does the same thing that I do, and that's another guy who's like us, who's always been a go-getter. Also, I moved furniture with him for 10 years, but just, he's in the same mindset, you know. I'm not going to wait for a forklift for something I can do myself and continue on with what I need to do.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. So a couple things about what you said. Like, first of all, I can relate to how that was when I was selling real estate. You know, there's only so much you could have done on your own. Like, you know, I'm in charge of the transaction, I'm in charge of a client and trying to get things done, but then you're relying on other people to do their job, like the home inspector, like the mortgage broker, other people that are involved in the transaction, the title company, and if there's a hang up on their end, then everything is stuck in limbo too. Yep. And that was one of the most frustrating things about selling real estate, for sure. But also, like, one thing I noticed, like, customer service is just completely in the toilet right now. Like
gone.
Yesterday, before I was coming to your house, I stopped and I got Firehouse subs, and it was just me and my wife in there. Nobody else was in there. 3 guys behind the counter. We ordered the sandwiches. Took them a good almost 10 minutes to make it. And then by the time we get the sandwiches, the order was wrong. And there's nobody else in there. It's like, how stupid can you be? I mean, there's nothing that could have prevented them from doing it right. And then they had to redo it, throw the food away. So that business loses money because of their, you know, stupid employees. And the cycle continues, you know?
You know, it's weird because it used to be like one bad word of mouth review would really affect a business. You're like, oh yeah, I heard that place isn't good, I'm not going there. I heard their customer service sucks, I'm not going there.
Right.
And now it's just, nobody cares. I mean, you used to be able to be like, you know, I'm upset, you're not helping me here, you're not righting the wrong, I'm going to take my business elsewhere. And then, you know, people would actually try and reel you back in. And now it's just, yeah, whatever, bye.
Yeah. But bye equals you're closing your doors 6 months or a year later because you're doing that to everybody, and then you end up going out of business. Like,
well, it's also so weird to me that this is happening because I feel like all we are anymore is just a customer service country, and there's no customer service.
Yeah.
I had the same experience actually yesterday. We also ordered food from a place that we frequently go to, literally the same order every time, and they got everything wrong.
Everything was wrong.
Everything was wrong, and everything was not on time, you know, and again,
that was when we went on the boat, right?
Yeah, and being somebody who has a toddler, like, dude, you gotta time everything down to the T and keep those little people happy, you know? I mean, to have him have to sit there for an extra 15 minutes when he wants to get out of his car seat, and we told him we're going for a boat ride, and he's like sitting there wondering why we're not doing what we told him we were gonna do. It's just aggravating. Even down to parts. I threw a water pump on my pickup truck 6 months ago. It's already leaking. And not because of the way it was assembled by me, but it's leaking right from the seal of the shaft for the pulley, which is an internal part. And it's just like, where's the quality control? Why am I replacing this? The original one lasted for 14 years.
Now, at least it's under warranty, but it's still a hassle for you because now you got to take more time out of your day to return it and go and replace it, and all the extra costs and time to do that.
Well, and I'm not going to pay anybody that I can do myself. So I'm very hands-on, as you know. So it's like, yeah, now I have to pull it back in the garage. I got to get everything ready.
And like you said, your time is the most valuable thing. So now you have to give that up instead of paying somebody. So either way, you pay.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
One thing that I noticed too is, like, maybe it could be part of the problem is that people aren't motivated, just like the Office Space movie. Like, you know, people are not having the jobs or maybe the money that they want in order to feel the motivation. I know I've been through that before on some of the jobs that we worked at together in the past, like just kind of doing the bare minimum not to get fired, you know?
Right. I just don't want to get hassled. Leave me alone.
Right. But when I was coming in here, I stopped at one of the Anytime Fitnesses somewhere here in Illinois, and I took a picture of this general manager sign that they had on the door saying that they're hiring, and some of the things they want you to do are like, you know, sell memberships, of course. They want you to develop and manage the membership sales pipeline. They want you to manage the facility and all of its operations and the things you would expect for a general manager. And the hours for this job are Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., Fridays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and they say that sometimes they might require you to work on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. But check this out. Here's the kicker. The salary for this job, all the compensation is base earnings plus commission and bonus potential, and the total earnings will range between $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Does that sound like a good opportunity to you?
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
Underpaid and overworked is what that sounds like.
Yeah, you're working full-time for this gym, trying to keep customers coming into this gym, and you're getting 30 to 40K a year, which today is, you know, sad to say, basically you're like the working poor now.
Oh,
almost.
yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, this is a job that's right here in Illinois, like close to where you live. Obviously, you wouldn't be interested in getting a job like this, right?
Absolutely not.
So, I mean, maybe that's part of the problem, that people have these sort of jobs and they're just like not motivated by the pay or the actual job itself. Maybe that could be part of it.
I mean, I definitely think that's part of the issue. You know, the cost of living goes up, but the pay is not increasing. And also, like you said right there, I mean, that's straight off of a wanted ad, you know, I mean,
yeah.
To expect all that and be like, here's your mediocre salary that you can stay living in your parents' basement.
Yeah, I don't even think you can afford a house around here for that kind of money.
So yeah, I mean, that definitely, I've always been a firm believer of attitude reflects leadership. And if, you know, a lot of these little chains that come up everywhere, and if there's no reason for you to, if there's no ladder to climb, there's no salary to grab at, yeah, what's the point? I guess I would do the bare minimum too.
Yeah, I mean, we've both been there before. I mean, I don't know about you now, and you have a family now, and, you know, for me, my motivation to stay on it and to keep working and put in the 100% is because it's all for me. Like, I reap 100% of the rewards of what I do here.
Absolutely.
On YouTube. So
right.
The more I work and the better I work, then the more I get paid.
Right.
What about you?
For me, I've always been this way. I just cannot be lazy. Nothing's ever been given to me. Anything I've ever wanted, I've had to go get. And I've done a pretty good job at that. And I just, you know, as you know too, I mean, it was a rough start. It was a big hole to climb out of when we were young.
Yeah.
And sometimes it felt like we just, every time you'd get a little bit closer out of it, then you'd fall back in it. And then like one day I was out of the hole, right? And things were moving along slowly but surely. Fast forward to today of, yeah, having a family and a house and some toys. And, you know, the mindset just doesn't change, because life, even though you get older and you've got more things, maybe you don't have to acquire as much. For me, it's like, that doesn't mean stop.
Right.
I still want to make sure that I have all of those things and I keep all of those things, and my son has a nice, stable life and a future. And again, just, it's in my DNA. I can't not do a good job. I'll be upset about it, of having to do the extra work of others. I'll still do it.
And one more point on the work ethic, like that, you know, not only has Dan has the similar work ethic as me, but like for me, you guys know, like you watch my videos religiously. I'm here 6 days a week. Like I don't care what's going on. I make sure I show up because, number one, I like what I do. Number two, I know people rely on the information that I put out in the videos, and they get something out of it, whether it's entertainment or just information about something they didn't know about, or they just like watching my channel, and I like to keep up with that. And the fact that I just do it no matter what, I think also separates, you know, my channel from a lot of other YouTube channels out there that just, you know, they post a video maybe once a week, or, oh, I didn't do one this week, X, you know, this happened, that happened. No, look at me, I'm here driving across the country, I'm, you know, spending time with family and still getting those 6 videos a week out. And I feel like that's the kind of work ethic that's kind of missing right now in this country.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, you've been laid off before here, you know, living in Rockford. That's not your first time being laid off. It's happened several times before. Yeah. Like, what is your take on the local job market and the local economy here? Do you think it's a good time to be looking for a job here right now, or better to hang on to the one you have right now?
I think it just kind of depends on your own situation. I think not necessarily in Rockford are there a lot of good jobs. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some jobs to be had if you've got pieces of paper and degrees and whatnot. But I'd say, you know, the suburbs is good. That's typically where I'm at for work. And I mean, there's work all over out there at a higher scale. And then, you know, living here is cheaper. It's lower property taxes. You know, us ourselves, we're unincorporated, so we don't have water bills and all that kind of stuff. I think you can live comfortably here if you do it right. But I think a lot of people get caught up in the shiny object and they overextend themselves to the point where they just can't afford their life.
I'm really glad you said that, because that was kind of my next segue into what I wanted to talk to you about, because it's something that we talk about a lot, just, you know, privately, and that's like people living beyond their means. Like you are able to live well within your means, so am I, and you know, our respective expenses are much lower than our actual incomes.
Sure.
And that's something that a lot of people do, a big mistake people make. You know, like even you were telling me yesterday that they're trying to get you to refinance your house. They're trying to get you to sell the house and pull the equity out of the house now, because of course, you know, your house has gone up a lot in value around here since you bought it. But the difference is the people that fall for that and do it, and the ones that don't are the ones who end up, you know, with money in their pocket later down the road.
Right.
So,
and that's exactly where my head is at with my house. A lot of people too, they never get to retire. They move every 7 years, 5 years, whatever it is. They start a new mortgage, they're at a different rate. You know, now it costs even more to put money down on a house. I don't ever plan to sell my house. You know, I want to pay it off, and then that way I have less bills and I can continue moving in my life. It always kind of blows my mind how much people like overextend themselves, but then they can't like afford a plumber to come fix a leaky pipe. You know, it's just like if you're that tight on money, you're doing stuff wrong.
as somebody growing up in this area, we both grew up here. Like, I used to hear a lot from my parents, oh, we can't afford that or whatever. We weren't broke, you know, we had things, but, you know.
Money was tight.
Yeah, money was tight. And it seems like for whatever reason, people in this area in general don't do what you're doing. They don't live within their means. They kind of overextend themselves even more, which is kind of weird because it's so cheap to live here relative to other parts of the country. So maybe that's why they feel like, oh, I have extra money, I can spend it on this or that or whatever. And then they just kind of go into the hole and not really think about the future.
I also feel like it's kind of like, well, Jim across the street bought a pickup truck, or dude down here did this, and it's just like everybody's got to compete with each other, and it's like nobody actually, they're like, I'll deal with the debt later.
Right.
Right now I gotta get the status symbol out. Or I think it's just more like a socially accepted thing. You know, it's like, oh, everybody's in debt. What does it matter?
Yeah. I think I remember you telling me a while ago that even a bunch of the old guys you work with at work, I mean, we're both 37, and you're telling me these guys are in their, what, their 50s or 60s and have nothing. Like, they don't have money for retirement. They don't have anything saved. They're in debt. Like, these guys are going to be completely screwed. I mean,
and
that's almost everybody that you know over there, right?
Because they're so used to living, you know, week to week. And
they're paycheck to paycheck then.
Right. You know, not everybody, but, you know, majority, just like everywhere else. People just, they're like, oh, I got to the next week. That's all I care about. And it's like they've been doing it for so long. And I get it. I mean, I used to be there.
Everybody was there at some point. It was
weird when all of a sudden it was like, oh, I've got an extra couple of months of money in my account, like I can breathe.
Right.
And then over time, you're like, yeah, just had to replace this water softener, just had to replace this sump pump. And
you had the money to do it. You didn't have to put it on the credit card. You didn't have to take out a home equity line of credit. Or things that a lot of people do in order to pay for stuff like that.
Right.
Right.
And by saving, you know, your money, then you have less stress. I mean, I get it, money can't buy happiness, right? But it can definitely be a lot less stressful when you don't have to worry about how you're gonna pay for a problem you weren't expecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
My neighbor is spending like 10 to 15 grand on his HVAC system right now. But, you know, when I was over there kind of checking it out, it clearly looked like they've never ever once rinsed the condenser. You know, you should do that once a year, really. You know, makes the system work less. It allows you to have your system a lot longer. You know, you're saving money, you're saving energy because it's not having to work as hard to do the job that it's supposed to do. And all you have to do is take a hose and, I mean, just rinse it off. Just get all the dirt and debris off of the coils. You know, it's I'm no HVAC expert, you know, but I guarantee if you go on YouTube and you look that up, you'll see a bunch of HVAC guys showing you how to just clean off your condenser to let it run more efficiently and prolong the life of the equipment.
Yeah, that's another thing I always tell people too on the channel. Like, not only is it very expensive to be a homeowner, that you have all these extra costs, but you're going to spend time. You're going to be working on the house. You're going to be spending a lot of weekends doing chores and things you probably don't want to do because you're a homeowner that you don't have to do if you're renting a one-bedroom apartment.
Right. So one thing everybody laughed at me for when I was a renter is when stuff would break, I would try to fix it myself. And I would let the landlord know, you know, but I would try to fix anything myself first. And they're like, why would you waste your time?
And your money.
And, well, I wouldn't spend the money on the parts or anything. If it was something I could fix with what I had, fine. Sometimes it's just something stupid like a little relay or whatever. But anyways, I would always try to fix it myself just because I'm mechanically inclined. But my thought was, I'll practice on the rental because it's already broken.
Yeah. And
the landlord's gonna fix it. So if I can gain some knowledge before I buy a house, then I'm already gonna be a step up ahead. So when this breaks, I'll know exactly what to do.
That's really smart.
Yeah, so, but when I moved into my house, I didn't know anything about owning a home. I didn't know anything about plumbing, electrical, none of that stuff. And I just taught myself. But I had years of wrenching, you know, behind me, so I was confident in learning. You know, obviously not everybody has that.
Right.
But I only learned how to wrench because life was a lot tighter back in the day and I couldn't afford to take my vehicles to the mechanic. So I had to figure it out for myself to save money because I didn't have very much back then.
Yeah, and all those frugal life skills add up to a lot in the end, you know. Now fast forward to today, 37 years old, you can afford life without blinking an eye, and you know, you're not stressed about money, you know, and that's the number one thing that people break up. We know you see divorces and things like that. It's the number one reason is money. They fight about money. We can't afford this, or somebody has the bad spending habit and the other one wants to save.
Yep.
Being on the same page with your spouse is also important with that stuff.
Right. Well, you know, and also doing the things that we do today. I mean, going boating, going out to dinner, taking the boy to soccer, all that stuff costs money. We can do those things because we're not spending money to pay somebody else to come and do those things for us.
Right.
But it's nice to have the option. I needed a new gas tank in my pickup truck. That's one I didn't want to do. I've done it before and it's a messy job. Let the mechanic handle it.
Yeah, and being able to just pick and choose your battles like that already, to me, that's like a version of being rich. You know, like people have their idea of what being rich is. It's not really a number in the bank. It's the freedom to be able to make those kinds of choices, if you ask me.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. You and I live completely different, on completely different scales of money. And we both, you know, are happy in the same exact ways.
Absolutely.
So like you said right there, it's not all about just the dollar. It's your quality of life.
And your freedom. Now, obviously we both grew up in this area, and it seems like every time I come back, it seems like, you know, more places close. There are some new places that open, but a lot of the places that I remember as a kid are no longer here. Yeah. And the problem that I see is that they just kind of close down and no one ever comes in and fills the space. I mean, you still live here, you still patronize businesses here and do things. Like, what do you think's going on here? Do you think things are getting better? Do you think things are getting worse? Because one thing I talk about a lot on the channel is how overall the economy is heading in a negative direction right now, because you're having more businesses nationwide that are closing than opening, and that's not a good trend to have.
Yeah.
And you have people that are, you know, going massively into credit card debt, kind of like what we just talked about. And so things just aren't heading the right direction. But do you see that happening here in Rockford?
I mean, myself, not so much. I really don't venture out a whole lot these days. I kind of, because of the fact that, again, I've got a family and, you know, we do own our house and we've got a nice little piece of land. I always like to be at home. I do notice, you know, like yesterday when we were driving around, like you were talking about, like I saw all these, you know, buildings that were just empty, and I'm just like, man, another one didn't make it.
Right.
And again, and like you said, nobody's moving into it, and it's like, what a shame. And then you see like all this new construction like a couple blocks up. I hope that doesn't turn into another empty building eventually, Be nice if they would use, you know, the other ones that are already up. But around here goes, it's like ever since COVID happened, all the little mom and pop shops really got swallowed up. And around here was a lot of mom and pop shops. It wasn't so much corporate stuff. And now it just seems like there's, you know, a Chipotle on every corner and a Starbucks, and it's just corporate chains all over anymore. And I guess that's probably because they're the only ones who can afford it.
Yeah,
you know,
and they're the only ones that survived the pandemic. Like you said, they, you know, got a massive amount of money from the government and were able to subsidize their business and their workers for a while. And small businesses had that opportunity too, but some of them maybe didn't know about it, or they didn't take advantage of it, or maybe they, you know, they actually did the wrong thing and they committed fraud, and maybe that's why they're under. Who knows? You don't know. But
well, I also think there's a little bit of a generational thing going on too. I mean, we're 37, we're getting into our 40s. A lot of these mom and pop shops, you know, whether it's a restaurant or a furniture store or whatever, you know, they're getting into their 70s, their 80s, they're retiring, and, you know, maybe they don't have any kids to take it over, or maybe the kids don't want to take it over. They just see dollar signs and
they just don't want to work, like we've been talking about this whole time.
They don't want to work.
Mom and dad did it the whole time, and I'll just take that money and
I'll just
spend it till I'm broke. Yeah.
Yep.
That's unfortunate how it goes, you know.
Yeah. And I like small local, you know, we try to support local businesses. When something new pops up, we give it a go. But then also back to what we were originally talking about, it's like you go there, it's like, okay, maybe the first experience wasn't so good. You give it another chance. You go again. Wasn't the same issue the first time, but there was still something that was not right. And it's just like, well, forget it. You know, I'm not going to spend a ton of money for crappy service and crappy product. And I think that's probably also coming into play, is everybody's charging an astronomical amount for everything anymore.
Yep.
But the quality is not there. It's $50 anymore to eat out. I mean, that's a couple pizzas and maybe some appetizers, you know, and it's like, it better be good for what I'm paying. And if it's not, then I'll just make it myself next time.
Yeah, I'm the same way. There's a lot of places I stopped going to since the pandemic down in Miami because the prices have basically doubled and the service got cut in half. So that's like the kiss of death for a business.
Yeah.
I used to go there, now I don't. So how much longer is that going to last, you know?
Right.
And I've already seen a couple of them go out of business because they don't want to treat their customers right. And you know, some of the problems, like especially with inflation, you know, the food inflation has been really bad.
Yeah.
And you know, that's one of the biggest things that have gone up in price a lot since we've had this spike in inflation, and it's hitting restaurants harder. But then when you combine that with, you know, bad service and employees that don't want to, you know, make your order properly and things like that, it gives you the idea that maybe I don't want to come back here anymore.
Well, no, I mean, I think nowadays business owners need to be on top of it more than ever to make sure that their staff is happy and doing their job. And, you know, because it doesn't take much for a business to fall, especially like we're saying right now with the way that things cost. It's like, I'm sure every business out there is seeing less and less foot traffic because people just don't have the money.
Right.
So that means instead of going out to a place, let's say you go out to it, you know, 4 times a month, now you're down to 1 or 2. And then those 1 or 2 are crappy experiences. And then it's like, well, later.
It's funny you mentioned that because the data actually shows exactly those numbers that you mentioned there, because a lot of people who are surveyed about their going out to eat habits, you know, they're going out, you know, a fraction of what they were before. If they went to a restaurant 4 times a month, now they're going once a month now.
Right.
And that's a big hit for a business to take. You know, you're losing 75% of your business and still have, now you have higher operating costs than before.
Yeah.
So, now speaking of that, this is a pretty cheap area to live, relatively speaking, you know, throughout the entire country.
Yeah.
And inflation has hit everybody. I don't care where you live or how rich you are. Everybody has felt the cost of living go up.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, you keep your bills low, so maybe it's not hurting you as much, but give me some examples of where you think you've seen your cost of living go up the most here in Illinois.
Well, food for one, and repairs. Parts are expensive, supplies are expensive, labor rates are more expensive, which is again why I try to do as much as I possibly can myself.
Right.
But even me fixing my own things, you know, I'll do my own plumbing, my own electrical work, anything that I can do. But even just the supplies of that stuff is going up. Everything is going up. For me, mostly what I see is like home expenses, because my house is 1960s, it's an older home. So that's where I've felt it a lot lately. The fact that we still have low overhead has been very helpful and very nice, but also we have a child. So, you know, we're doing diapers now and we have an extra mouth to feed, and, you know, those things have gone up, the diapers and clothes and even just the toys. And I mean, the toys are still, some of them, it's like they're still like what we had when we were kids, you know, the same exact thing, a little Red Ryder wagon or big wheel, whatever.
Yeah.
It's crazy expensive for the same thing. I feel like we just live in like a throwaway world, you know, nothing lasts anymore.
Oh yeah, it's all built that way on purpose, for sure. I mean, that's what I wanted to get out of you and get kind of an idea of what has gone up. And that's pretty typical of what's gone up for everybody, including me. Even though I don't have kids, I live in a very expensive area, and you feel it even more in places like that with insurance and property taxes and things that go up a lot there. And you know, just having the budget to pay for it, that's where living below your means comes in. Absolutely. You know, if you didn't do that, then when you had these extra expenses on your truck or your house or whatever, now you'd be forced to go in debt in order to pay for that stuff. Yep. Debt is one thing that I just cannot stand to have. I don't use my credit cards unless I absolutely have to. I just don't like to owe anything. Me neither. You know, everything has gone up, as everybody knows. I mean, straight down to the car parts that you're putting on your car, but food has been a lot. And like you said too, insurance. I mean, we live, like you said, even here, relatively cheaper. I mean, my insurance went up a pretty good amount, like an extra $50 a month. Yeah. For no reason. I called the insurance company and I was like, why is my premium so much higher? And, you know, I was expecting them to give the run-of-the-mill statement of, well, because of claims in your area and blah, blah, blah. Which is always like, okay, I'm gonna go look elsewhere then, because I'm not gonna pay for other people's bad driving habits. Right. But this time they was like, yeah, we literally have no reason, just the cost of inflation, airbags are going up, other stuff is going up, you know, basically stuff that they have claims on. So everything is going up. So unfortunately we have to eat that. That's right. There's no escaping it this time around, unfortunately. It's not just because you have bad drivers in your area or whatever. It's because everything is just costing more. One thing, you know, that I learned when I was young, and I actually learned this from my uncle, and it was like, if you think about making a purchase, throw it in your budget, put the money, you know, in your savings account or somewhere good, so you can get used to having an added expense in your budget. If you can handle it, then great. If you can't, then you know you shouldn't do it, and at least you're not stuck in something you can't be in. Something else too that I've always done is, you know, my wife and I, we split the mortgage, but I've always had the mortgage in my budget as the full mortgage. So I always, you know, at the end of the month, I pay the mortgage, she gives me her half, that half gets saved. It doesn't get touched, it goes straight to the savings. That way you get one big chunk, you don't touch it, you leave it alone. Absolutely. I think that's extremely smart. Now, not everybody can do that if you live in a very high cost of living area, but the same principle can be applied. You might not be able to save half of that mortgage payment, but even if you're able to save 20% of it or even 15% of it, something would be better than nothing, rather than using every little bit extra to go and get a new car or, you know, get some extra debt or extra toys you can't really afford. Right. I think a lot of people, like, it's hard to start, right? I mean, say you can only afford to put away $50 a week or $100 a month. It's just like, it's not enough for them to like start it, right? So they don't ever see something get bigger and bigger and bigger over time. They're just like, I can't afford to save anything. I'll just buy this, whatever, it doesn't matter. I'll always be broke.
and they just stay in that mindset. But it's like once you kind of get that ball rolling, you got, you know, a decent amount stashed away, and you just kind of, it almost becomes addictive. You just want to keep watching it grow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat with that. And I feel like, as maybe probably another thing that we both have in common is like we didn't grow up in rich families. I mean,
No.
we didn't grow up poor either. It's not
No.
like we had no food and no clothes or anything like
Right.
that. But when you hear your parents say enough times like, oh, we can't afford that, or we can't have this, or we can't have that, as a
Right.
kid, it kind of twists your mind into a thinking of like, why not?
Yeah.
And for me, I always wanted to grow up and say, well, I can afford to have anything I want,
Yeah,
you know?
right. I don't want anybody to tell me no.
Right.
If you tell me no, it's just going to make me work harder to get it.
Exactly. And so that mentality and mindset alone, I think, also contributes to our financial responsibility.
Absolutely. Well, we, you know, times were also different. I mean, we were eager to get our licenses and go, you know, make our own money and you know, have our own things, because we got told, no, you know, we can't do that, or no, it's not in the cards right now, or we can't afford it, or I don't really know what changed over time, but I don't even think, you know, kids want to get their license anymore.
Oh yeah, they just want to order Lyft or Uber or whatever, and you know, do everything on the phone.
Back when we grew up, nothing was convenient. I mean, you wanted something, you had to go work for it, or you had to go get it. I mean, even to talk to your friend, you had to physically get on your bike and ride over to his house.
Yeah.
You know, if mom was on the phone, she could be on the phone for an hour. You can't, I mean, that's a landline.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No texting, no social media.
everything took effort back then.
Absolutely. One thing that I caution people against, like, I'm fine if people want to buy a house. If you want to own your house and, you know, have a place to call home and you can afford it, that's great. But like you just said, you know, your household expenses are kind of the things that have gone up the most with inflation.
Yep.
And a lot of people today, I mean, they will buy a house and the mortgage payment will literally be half of their income, you know, because mortgage companies will approve you for up to like a 45% debt to income ratio, and that is with your gross take-home pay.
Yep.
So really, realistic speaking, you know, people are paying more than half in that case.
Yeah.
And then something happens with the house, like you're saying, you have to replace the water heater, you have to replace whatever. They don't have the money.
Oh, I had my water heater, my water softener, my sump pump go out within 2 months of each other. And this was all over the winter. And of course, you know, winter is like, that's when everything breaks, right? The cold is stressful and everything. Your furnace is running all the time. Your pipes get, you know, whatever. But so when we got approved for our house, they told us the same thing. Like, oh, you're approved for $300,000.
Right.
And we
and
laughed.
how much did you pay for your house?
We paid $117.
There you go. Less than half of what your approved budget was.
So we actually laughed at the banker and he shook his head like, you guys don't want to be in a nice big house? And we're like, oh, we'd love to, but we want to be able to afford life.
That's right.
So stuff is going to break on that house. And if I'm putting all the money I am bringing in into a mortgage payment, then you're going to own that house sooner rather than later.
That's right.
And I'll be out on my butt.
And you know what, man, like after all the years, you know, we've been friends, and like after everything you've told me, I feel like that single-handedly is probably one of the smartest financial decisions you ever made, is to buy that house, but way below what you could actually afford. And now even if you get laid off again, or your wife gets laid off, or something like that were to happen, you guys could afford that house on just one income.
Yes, that was what we wanted to do when buying a house. We had a list of requirements, you know, obviously central air was one. I wanted a ranch, she wanted a sunroom. We fell into this house out of nowhere. It was a great find. And the biggest thing was like, okay, I want to find, we decided not to go over 130. Again, this is pre-COVID, so this is before everything hiked up, literally right before everything hiked up.
Yeah.
But that was our budget, was 130, because we wanted to be able to afford our life if something were to happen to one of our jobs. So we have each other as a safety net, but then because we also have a dual income and we live low like that, we can save money. Like I said before, money doesn't buy happiness, but it's a lot less stress when you know if you have an issue, it's okay. I'm not struggling to fix this.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, after all these years of us not living next to each other, I'm glad that we still have these common sense things in common that so many people don't have, apparently, because otherwise the world would be in much better shape than it is. So
yeah,
I'm just really glad to hear that things are going that well for you, even in how things are messed up in the world right now. So
absolutely.
Congrats, man.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You as well.
So thanks for coming on. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.